right, you guys, welcome back to another episode of the Dental Marketing Secrets Podcast, where, as you know, we provide actionable tips and strategies and tactics that you can take and apply immediately to your practice so that you can serve more patients, leave a greater impact. And today I have the honor of having Lorie Streeter with me back again on the show. Welcome back, Lorie.
Thank you.
And Lorie,
glad to be here. It's been a while.
I know it's been a minute. So it's great to have you back on the show. Lorie is the vice president of ADOM, which is the American Association of Dental Office Management. And there's a lot of reasons I wanted to have Lorie back on the show, but she's just has so much experience, both from the practice side. She also owned a marketing company for a while and now is working with ADOM. And so she has this comprehensive viewpoint of marketing as a whole for a practice, but specifically now working with dental office managers. And so that's kind of what we wanted to dive into today. The topic being, dental office, your office manager can be your team captain for your marketing. And it's springtime, and it seems like when spring comes out, that's all the sports come out. Certainly there's stuff in the winter, but it's full force. When spring hits. And I've got kids playing soccer and lacrosse, and swimming will be starting up soon. So I thought this was a perfect time to talk about this. So again, Lorie, thanks again for coming on. Why don't you take a minute and talk about your background a little bit so people understand kind of where you're coming from.
Of course. So the interesting thing about marketing for me was I was a natural born marketer, but never had the schooling, right? So I jumped in full force. So in my 20s, I had a 6-piece band. I was working in a dental practice. I had to market my band, market my dental practice. I had kind of a huge dichotomy of right and left. This is super creative. This is super clinical. So everything with me was kind of natural born. My grandmother's name was Dorothy. And when I was speaking with Dorothy and, she would talk to me about all kinds of things in life, she would tell me, if I had $1 million, I'd buy a car lot and I would give it to you to sell cars and make $10 million. And I knew kind of right then and there, Mark, that there was something about me that I understood the dynamics of how humans interacted with each other.
Yeah.
And I think the pull of how to not only develop your brand, but also to speak to that brand in such a way that, I love that you got to have mind share before you have market share.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so true today. So I think for myself, like you said, I owned a marketing company in Minnesota for over 10 years. I have a lot of boots on the ground experience. I worked before Smile Brands was called Bright Now Dental. I worked at Smile Brands for 4 years, and I marketed group practices all across Northern California. I have a lot of boots on the ground experience. And then this last 17 years with ADOM, being able to watch really good office managers, market within their practices, the type of products they like, how they do it, what they think about, do they have time for it? So I'm hoping I can give some insight today as we move forward in our conversation, because for you were talking about all those great sports, and I'm like, it's track season for me. My son was a track runner.
Yeah.
So we were freezing cold watching track meets. So yeah, definitely know this time of year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, and it's such a great topic too, because I think there's a lot of missed opportunity, when it comes to harnessing the value that an office manager brings to the practice. I think it can get overlooked. So actually, one thing that I thought of that I wanted you to speak on, Lorie, was what is one thing that you wish that all dentists knew about office managers, or one thing that they took advantage of, or one thing, you know what I'm saying?
Of course, absolutely. And I've had probably 1,000,001 conversations with our founder and president, Heather Colicchio, about this exact thing. As an office manager, I don't think dentists realize, I don't think any team member realizes, and this is not to push them aside from office managers, but to say, if there was an insight, is that office managers really feel like they're on an island.
Okay.
It wasn't until, ADOM came along that where a lot of dental meetings said, hey, we have education for you specifically, office manager. Back when I was an office manager, that didn't exist. So I think the feeling of being on an island and not having resources, it's not like you're a dentist and you're part of like a Seattle study club where you can, unless they have a group like ADOM, they're kind of on their own. So the other thing I would want them to know is that you may have a gold mine in your office manager because your office manager might have a marketing brain and you just don't know it. I'm one of those fortunate people that loves to look at a spreadsheet, but can also market the heck out of anything. So I think there are those people out there, and a dentist should realize a couple things about their office manager. One, that if they don't have a title, and I kind of made some notes for our talk today, like there's so many office managers out there, but a lot of them don't have the title, but they're actually doing the job.
Yeah.
So I think those are key things that I think are important. One, they need education. They need a supportive environment. Even if, that's when we get clinical and we say, a dental assistant has to have X amount of CE, a hygienist has to have X amount of CE, and the dentist alike, there's this gap for the office manager where they're not required to have that, but they have to be the best that they can be because in a lot of cases, they're running the practice.
Yeah.
And that's not to take away from the dentist who owns the practice, but literally a lot of times that dentist will kind of hand the reins over to that office manager, and the office manager has to be responsible. So I think it's important all the way around that they're recognizing who they have in that seat, utilizing their talents, and then making sure that they continue their education.
Yeah. That's critical. I mean, so many of them would thrive under that if they just had the right tools and resources and training, and many of them do already, I mean, they have that ability to figure it out as they go and that resourcefulness to find out the information that they need. But yeah, if they can get their hands on training and tools, then they're just sky's the limit, for a lot of them. So that's cool. That's a great insight for sure. So let's start kind of, with the basics. Walk us through, what a typical day is like for an office manager so we can kind of get some context with who we're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. And full disclosure, I have not worked in a dental practice since I was in my 20s and 30s. That was like yesterday. Well, I promise. No, I'm just
about kidding. A year ago, no. Right?
Yeah. But the great news is with our private members forums at ADOM and things like that, I get to take a peek in there all the time. So, for me, it depends on, I want to say, the type of office manager. And when I say that, there are different skill sets within that title. So a lot of office managers run everything, right? Yeah. Very multitask, multi-focus, multitasking. And then there are other office managers who have specific roles. They build the insurance, they work the schedule, that type of thing. To me, a typical day for me, excuse me, was making sure the schedule is full. Of course, dealing with our wonderful patients. I mean, if I could say that my biggest joy as being an office manager was getting to know every single patient like they were my friends. I'll never forget, my son's 24 now, but when I found out I was pregnant with my son, I mean, every patient that came in brought a gift for my baby.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the most beautiful thing. And the rest of my office was like, what are you doing? Like, why are they bringing you all these gifts? And I'm like, I didn't ask them to. They're just wonderful. So my point is being that first face, being that first impression. There's lots of offices now where there's multiple layers, right? Some office managers sit in the back. I have a favorite office manager in Minnesota. Her name's Diana. And although she has an office in the back, she's always up front. When she hears somebody's voice that she recognizes, she comes right to the front, greets them. So I think interaction with patients is a big part of their role to prep that patient, because let's face it, we're still in a mode where people don't love to go to the dentist most of the time. I don't know anyone that says, oh, I'm so excited going to the dentist.
I know.
I mean, that just doesn't work in our vocabulary, right?
No.
So they're in a place where they're the first point of calming that patient, welcoming that patient, and getting them established. So I don't want to take any emphasis off the fact that patient interaction, to me, is one of the most important things that a person in the front or an office manager can do. And then there's the dreaded insurance.
Oh, yeah.
So you're either on your phone with the insurance, you're billing the insurance, you're pulling the reports, you're looking to see if someone's got a pre-author. I mean, it's monotonous and it's difficult. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of their jobs. And I have really great relationships with a lot of wonderful insurance companies, and everyone in this industry means well, but it's a really tough job.
Yeah.
And I think it was one of my least favorite parts of my day. And then again, last but not least, I said at the beginning, you're constantly kind of monitoring that schedule. You're kind of like, it's like a door of, if you think about it, like you're moving chess pieces all the time, and you're making sure that schedule is not only tight and fit, how much time for each procedure. Of course, our practice management software, you think, does the majority of that for you. But as an office manager, I still made sure that everything was running smoothly.
Right.
Even though that schedule was set, I was always watching to make sure everybody was on time, everybody's in the right, in the right places. So, I mean, those are to me, they're the core things that go on throughout the day. And then there's the 90 million other unforeseen things that come up. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I saw too. Sometimes they're also involved in training and developing the other team members, I mean, which we all know that can be just so time consuming and exhausting. So there, I know that is a tough laundry list to knock off on a regular basis. Oh,
for
man.
sure. And the really great office managers, like you said, are more leader style.
Yeah.
They're consultative, they're compassionate, and more than anything, they are trying to develop their team members.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you have a team, which is much like a family, you have to develop them kind of without them even knowing you're doing it.
Yeah.
So it's a subtle role, that they have to play, that I think some really good office managers, highly skilled at taking a team member, and sometimes in some cases that I've seen, helping each other change each other's lives. I mean, you're with these people all day long.
Yeah.
It's an important spot.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Lorie, let's talk a little bit now about why we've talked a little bit about their responsibilities, what they're doing, what on a regular basis. Why should they also be involved with the marketing of a practice, and how can an office manager dramatically improve a practice's marketing efforts overall?
So whether you're working with a company or a product or whatever, the reason I love the office manager perspective, and remember, this is my right brain, left brain talking. So if they get confused and start duking it out, let me know. But one of the things I think is so important is that I believe that for a good office manager, there is a perspective that they have, an intuitive perspective of the whole entire team. So one of the things that I love to do, and I won't do it right now because it's, I probably have done it before, but I love telling the ADOM story, because I look at it from, Heather, our president, will tell me, you tell the story of the origin of ADOM, she said, sometimes better than I do, because you're looking at it from a whole different lens, right? So as an office manager, think of the clinician. So the dentist is looking in his 2x2 square, doing this very intricate work on a patient's mouth. The hygienist is doing that. The dental assistant is sitting back, assisting in that procedure. The office manager has this panoramic view of the whole practice, all the way from the KPIs, all the way down to the dentist's mood, to the hygienist has to go pick up her child at 2:00, whatever that looks like. They kind of see it all. So from a marketing lens, I think marketing is about understanding your product in a panoramic way so that you can position it to any consumer that might benefit from it. So just because I'm a consumer over here and I'm looking for a practice that's, let's say, kid friendly, I'm going to know immediately that that's our area. That's, people are asking for that. Our patients, the demographic of our patients that we have already bring their children because we see kids, we don't send them out, whatever the case may be. That office manager has that good perspective, that good panoramic view of the practice. So that's why I think they're really super important, if not to help run that piece, but to really be impactful in kind of negotiating where the practice goes when displaying their brand publicly.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's such a key point there. As you're talking about it, Lorie, I thought of, when we think of we think of patients over here, we think of the practice on this side, and there's this gap in between, I mean, there's this that we have to overcome, and the perfect person to help facilitate the bridge between the two parties, the practice and the patients, is the office manager. They have that viewpoint, they have that perspective, like you were saying, of both the practice side, but also the patient side, because they hear that interaction. They can feel, they feel their concerns and their sometimes their pain or their frustration. They have all of that. They get exposed to all of that because they're in the trenches, and thus they have this viewpoint that is so valuable. I mean, when it comes to market, it's just understanding where they're coming from, where the patients are coming from, but also where the practice, there's the strength of the practice, and how they could tie those two together. So I think that's a beautiful way to look at that.
I think it's important to not negate that, right? That's the biggest thing, is that a lot of dentists aren't aware, because what you're seeing is when you hire an office manager, it's kind of funny, real quick. Well, when I got hired, I actually met the first dentist I went to work for. I met him in a bar. So I was singing in a bar, and he was there with his, at that time, wife, and I was giving singing lessons to her son. And she had brought him in to watch me perform. And I did. And again, I was in my early 20s, and he called me over during the break, and he's like, "Hey, what do you do during the day?" And I said, "I work for an ophthalmology practice." And he said, "Would you ever be interested in working in a dental practice as a dental office manager?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'll come interview." But think about what he recognized in me. He didn't ask me if I knew how to formulate, and at that time, email wasn't as big of a deal, but he didn't ask me if I understood accounts receivable. He didn't ask me if I was good at scheduling. He said, "You would be perfect for my practice. You would get along great with my hygienist. My patients would love you." So he was that type of dentist that recognized something in me. And oh my gosh, he's still around, and he's retired, but I thank him all the time. He gave me my career just by recognizing something in me. So don't ever discount, as a dentist, that you have the innate ability to not only look into that 2x2 square and fix those beautiful teeth, but you also can recognize things in your team that can really enhance your practice.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. I know. And you see that all the time, right? I mean, those that are really good leaders identify those characteristics without all the empirical data that says, oh, they've done this certification, this training, this or that. They just recognize the greatness within someone and can bring that out, and that's what's so neat about that. That's so cool. That is a cool story. So let's talk a little bit about also just kind of the tone, I guess you could say, that an office manager sets for the rest of the practice, for the rest of the staff, when it comes to marketing. Speak to that a little bit, Lorie, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about it, their perspective, and I like to use the word savvy. So a savvy office manager understands every single team, understands the strengths, understands what patients are looking for. I was one of the first practices on 1-800-DENTIST years ago. And I knew just by the tone of the patient, whether they would come in, whether they would make their appointment, by the questions they ask, that type of thing. So we're interacting, less and less on the phone with patients, more by text. They're filling out their paperwork ahead of time. So an office manager has to be really savvy and remember that, when I say an office manager who can handle marketing, I think there are some that wouldn't touch it at all. Wouldn't really want to be knee deep in the numbers and the critical steps of being an office manager. But those who light up when they go, "Oh my gosh, that would be such a great idea for this social post." Right. So those are the people that are thinking, they're the people that are active on social media. I mean, you almost have to be nowadays, but active on social media. They're fun. This is an office manager who understands that, if we sponsor a soccer team, it's just as important as the beautiful veneer case that we did last week. That our patients want to know that we're, involved in the community, that we're inputting what we can into our environment, society.
Right.
You know, they want to know those types of things. And I think office managers, because they see the panoramic view, have a great window into how to market that practice.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm sitting at the front and I hear over 100 times a week, oh my gosh, you know, your hygienist is fantastic. Like, I've never had such a good hygienist. Let's feature our hygienist.
Right.
Let's talk about this person. I mean, it's an innate reaction to being able to see all aspects of what the team is capable of. So I think even if the office manager isn't responsible for it, you know, I think supporting the content that is derived from the interactions in the practice is super important. And I also think because of their ability to multitask, they might be a great person if you have softwares or outside companies. Maybe this is the person that oversees the marketing calendar.
Yeah.
You know, that listens for that content. Like, even if you're working with an agency that says, hey, we don't work inside your practice all the time, tell us what great things you're doing. That office manager can say, I know I've got these social media posts coming up and that we're going to promote the practice in this way. Let me listen as I'm doing all my other work for how to infuse some of our best qualities into that marketing calendar.
Yeah. Well, and it just helps you be so much more strategic. You know, I mean, going back to the example that you gave with the hygienist, you know, if you identify those advantages that you have as a practice, and let's say if it's this a hygienist and the experience that he or she delivers, then why not lead with that? You know, I mean, make that the first step, the experience that a patient has, you know, because then you're starting off with the right foot. You know, it's going to be a good experience for them, and your chances of maintaining that client for years to come just went through the roof, you know? So it's taking all that interaction, that data that you're seeing from patients on a regular basis, and then being strategic about it and implementing it to benefit the practice for years to come.
And I really do think that that's what most office managers are best at, because at the end of the day, you know, I remember when I was sitting in that chair, you know, there'd be times when I'd be like, I am not putting a bridge in at 3:00 in the afternoon. Like, I knew, you know, when my doctor, when my hygienist, when they were at their best, you know, and hopefully it's all day long, right? I mean,
right.
Full disclosure, but you know, I don't want to put something challenging in their way at a time when I know that they're not, you know, fully engaged and not feeling tired from the rest of the day. I mean, some of it's common sense, but the other piece of it is, you know, I don't want to pigeonhole here, but I really do look at the office manager as a very nurturing role in the practice. It's a role where you're kind of playing, you know, I'm going to use your word, team captain.
Yeah.
And that team captain's role, my son was the team captain of his track team. And part of the reason was you're supposed to be positive all the time. You're supposed to take the bads and turn them into wins. I mean, all those things an office manager should be able to be really helpful at. And, you know, the way that supports the practice the most is really identifying when you have your number one referral source in marketing, which is your own patient.
Right.
So there may be a dentist and a hygienist who sees the patient, you know, every 6 months and they have an exam, but the office manager knows that there are 8 other patients that are attached to that patient, and that person can be the flow of information back to that dentist to say, this person is a huge referrer.
Yeah.
And you know, there's no reason why we can't ask for that again. So that level of communication between that office manager and their awareness, I think, fits into the team dynamic perfectly. So, you know, most people who have, you know, my dentist that I go to, I mean, half the time they don't even market for new patients because they're so good at their own internal marketing that they just don't need it. And I don't know about you, but I'm seeing kind of post-COVID, well, I can say that technically, hopefully we're on the other side of everything. But, you know, I think that we have 2 different types of practices now, really. Ones that are hurting for new patients and ones that just can't take anymore.
Just bursting.
I don't see a middle. Yeah. I don't see a middle ground right now, really.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. That's so interesting, you know, and I think, you know, my experience too, you know, working with I was telling you earlier, but we work with probably a dozen, 15 different offices that we work with on a regular basis. And I love it, come as an outsider coming into the practice and talking with an office manager. And if we're presenting ideas or, we're trying to formulate a marketing calendar, when they say, no, that is definitely not, not what we want. If they shut down an idea like that, just like instinctively, because they know they've had that experience, or that they, like you said, they light up at an idea because they've seen that happen so many times. So that feedback is critical, because they also, what I've noticed when we're congruent like that, when we match up our ideas, then it's so much easier for the rest of the team to get behind as well. Otherwise, you're just kind of putting it out there and it just dies a slow, painful death because there's no real legs behind it. Nobody's really engaged with it. And so I love having an office manager's perspective and insight, even if it's not always empirically based, but it's just through those interactions that they have day in and day out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about specific, approaches to marketing. If you were, let's say, obviously you're working with you're talking with a lot of, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands, maybe, of office managers at this point. I don't know how big you guys are these days. It's so cool.
Lots.
Yeah. But just as far as tactics, or specific, marketing campaigns, what would you do, Lorie, if you were an office manager today? What are some of the things that you would do to generate new patients?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the part where I light up. I get so excited because when I owned my marketing company, I did this for many years, and a lot of that I learned when I worked at Smile Brands, and just they let us have a natural flow of how we marketed each community. Cool. So in no particular order, but I cannot not lead with, number one would be training for the team on how to ask for referrals. Yeah. And I think so many times there's a problem there. There's a disconnect with, I don't know, people are embarrassed. It's kind of like, how I can compliment you, but the minute I try to compliment me, I'm like, oh no, no, thank you. So it's very hard for a dentist to say, hey, I'm all that in a bag of chips. Send your friends. Right. You know what I'm saying? So some really good intrinsic training on how to ask for referrals. Who's the best person in the practice to do that? When someone makes this comment, that's right. Our cue to do that.
Yep.
Those are the types of things like, oh my gosh, Dr. Smith, you're my favorite. Oh my gosh, well, that's wonderful. But guess what? We have a favorites program. Have something at the ready when those keywords come along for your team to pick up on. It's time to ask for that referral. So let's get that off the table, because that's number one. There's no doubt about it. I'm all for using outside companies like yours and others. I think if you're not a marketing focused practice and you want new patients, work with some companies that are fantastic. I mean, there's so many unique dental practices in the United States right now and beyond. And there's so many unique people like you and others that can help them. I would not, if I was in a practice today and I had an area where I felt like we needed help, I definitely would seek some kind of either technological help to do something. I get to see new products all the time, so it's really cool on my side of the fence. So by the way, we have over 10,000 members at this point. Wow. When I started, there was 1,200. So 10,000 nationwide. Awesome. So very exciting. So we're constantly seeing all the new things that are coming to play, but I'm a little bit more holistically focused, I think, when it comes to marketing than that. Definitely wouldn't be afraid to use an outside agency, but I love things like wellness events. Like if a company is doing open enrollment and you have a patient where they work at XYZ tire company. Yes. I love saying, can I drop off toothbrushes and can I drop off toothpaste? I mean, those are very old school guerrilla marketing kind of strategies, but I love them. They work, and there's not enough human interaction anymore. I don't want it to get where, somebody's answering the phone for us and we're not talking to our patients. I don't want to be in that world. I think a lot of things being automated from a marketing standpoint are great. I think, optimizing your website and making sure that you work on certain ads. I think all that, those things are great, but nothing beats a good old-fashioned community event where you're handing out coffee to people who are walking or running in a race, and your banner's up there that says Dr. Smith's office.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, did you see that dentist that was out there giving us coffee? He really cares about it. When I was in marketing, when I owned my own company, I would rent out a coffee shop, literally, and basically co-network with a coffee shop and say, for the next 2 hours, I'm going to pay for every bit of coffee, any order that comes in here for the next 2 hours. Those were the types of things that I worked with my practices on. And not only was it had a twofold effect. Not only because these were smaller communities, so 20, 30,000. I'm not talking about,
big
New
metropolis.
York. I'm talking about smaller communities. But it still can be done in your area, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you set your map perimeter and say, these are really where our patients come from, and you should be able to extract all that data out of your software nowadays. You should be able to draw a big circle and see this is where they come from,
right,
and do what you can in your area. So I really love community marketing, and I really love thinking outside the box, because I think a combination of wellness events, community events, and then a little bit of B2B. I mean, how scary would it be? Do you want me to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Because most people kind of clap back and go, I don't know what she's talking about. So, B2C and B2B are two very different things. Business to consumer is I'm going directly to the patient. I'm going right where they are, to their neighborhoods, to their inbox, to their mailbox, whatever that looks like. And I'm trying to get that patient to come to my practice. B2B is very different. It's understanding that I have 60 patients that all come from John's Tire Store.
Mm-hmm.
I know they have at least 100 employees.
Yeah.
I'm going to go thank that business for all those people that come into my practice. There's ways to do that. And if you don't have, I've said this years ago, and I honestly, I've got the articles. When I first started, I was like, every office should have a marketing person in their practice.
100%.
Now, if you can't afford to have that marketing person, then you really have to define who is going to be responsible for that, which is, basically our team captain theory here. But there's no reason why you shouldn't be allowing, if you have the structure, someone to go out into the community respectfully, depending on guidelines and things like that, and saying, hey, I'm with Dr. Smith's office down the street, and we noticed that you have 30 people that come to our practice. I'd like to just drop you off this 2 dozen donuts or whatever it is.
Simple. Recognizing,
simple, and noticing what there is to notice.
Yeah.
It's the most simple thing. So there's an old philosophy that says, like, 1 time is a coincidence, 2 times it's noteworthy, 3 times it's a pattern, 4 times it's like, holy what?
Yeah.
And now you're getting 10 patients from the same place. They're obviously going back and talking to you, talking about your practice in a great way. Leverage that.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I think I would be looking at. And, I also noted, like, special offers. It's obviously, it varies state by state, so you got to be really careful with that kind of thing. But you can also offer, don't be afraid to offer something unique to bring somebody in. We've teeth whitened everybody to death, I think.
Right.
But maybe it's, new patients, and okay, let me caveat this by saying, new patients get a $10 Starbucks gift card, whatever you choose, right? Whatever works for you. But then, depending on your state and your laws, don't ever discount going back and saying, you've been a patient for 10 years in our practice. Enjoy this XYZ from us. We're so grateful that you've been with us for 10 years.
Yeah, just because.
So
yeah.
Well-rounded philosophy of, we want the new, we want to thank the existing patients that have been supporting us forever. So there's a I don't want to say a specific product name because I don't want you to be like, Lorie, they're not an advertiser. So, but I know you're open to that kind of thing. But I've been working with who I think is like just an absolute guru in marketing too, and besides you, of course. And he's got a new product out, and his new product actually captures referrals like in a couple clicks on someone's phone. testimonials are so big right now.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I Google review and read them on almost everything I do and buy now. And boy, I'll tell you, it makes a big difference. I know that maybe half the time those people are like their grandparents that are just saying, I love Mark. He's so wonderful.
Exactly.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Right. But I do read them. And I think a lot of consumers do now. We just live in that type of a world where we have to be savvy about listening to what other people think about something that you just experienced.
Yeah.
So
that social proof is an important aspect. No, that was a lot, but there's so many good things in there. I just wanted to hit on a couple of them too. You mentioned the community events, and I think that's such a good idea because one, you're doing something different that most practices are not willing to do or not going to do, and so, there might be a few that are doing a wellness event, but I think, to give you an example, we did helped a new practice with an open house. And, the idea of going to a dentist's office at an open house is it's right up there with just going to the dentist. It's not very exciting. It's not something you circle the calendar for. But what we did is we decided to target the kids, and make it more of a kid-friendly activity. And parents will do anything for their kids, and rightly so. Kids are the best. But so we decided to make it a little bit different, and we made it a live reptile show. We had a huge Burmese python. I got a picture of myself. It's like 20 feet long. It's huge. It's just this, and they can hold it. And there's this just giant tortoise. And then they had all these other animals too. And then face painting. We had a blow up house. We had, and what's neat about this is, one, it's a different event. And so people are naturally going to take a little bit more notice of it. But two, it gives you the opportunity to do more of that B2B marketing, where you can go to other companies and say, we're putting on this event. We'd love to have you there. Let's just get as many people as we can. It's going to be a win for both of us. And so we got a radio station to be a sponsor, so they talked about the event, and they had a booth. They did one of those money booths where the money flies up and you try and catch it. And so it was just a fun time. And we probably had close to 200 people in attendance, for this office. And then I think they had about 32 people sign up for an appointment that same day, but people were talking about it for the next 6 months, and it's just such a unique opportunity to get out and show yourself in a different light, to personalize your practice, but also connect with other businesses. We're all, as business owners, we're all starving for that exposure and that traffic, and if we can collaborate, it's going to be so much better for all of us. So I definitely love that. And I love the training on referrals too. I think there is that hesitancy to say, well, this is what I do. And it's funny because I had this guy, I forget what profession he was, but he came up to me and introduced himself. He's like, hey, my name's Jack something, and I do this and I'm really good at it, but it wasn't that he was braggy or showy, he was just very matter of fact about it. And I was like, really taken aback, I said, man, I don't know if I would do that, even though I feel like I'm good at it, but stating it like that was really impressive. Actually, I felt like, man, this guy really probably is good at it, and so do it in a way, obviously, that's comfortable with you and not, and all that. But I think getting over that hurdle of, because I don't know if it's
what we're good at.
Yeah. And some people are afraid that, it's going to come off as needy, or that I'm not good at it. And so I have to ask for this, but, it's more recognizing the value that you provide and being able to help other people, bring those people to you so you can help them more. It's just connecting those people that need what you provide in an easy way, so I love those.
They can look at it this way. You're providing a synergistic connection that a person would not have had. You're actually helping them with their healthcare. So a practice is not doing a disservice to anyone by asking for a referral.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you a really quick throwback Thursday when you were talking about your community event.
Yeah.
So my mom was a professional clown.
Oh, no way.
I made her change her costume, and I called her Flossie the Clown.
Yeah.
And she had a big giant toothbrush, and I hung styrofoam glitter teeth. I had them cut out at a styrofoam place, and I hung them all over the practice that we were opening in Fresno, California. And I leveraged my Chamber of Commerce like crazy.
Yeah.
So I was a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I worked with other people's businesses. If you have that internal marketing person or that person that kind of can go out and float and work with your specialty referrals and that type of thing, you have that person be really active in your Chamber of Commerce too, because that's how you meet other businesses.
Yeah, that's a great example. A great example. Oh, that is cool.
Super fun.
Yeah.
Flossy.
That is cool.
Flossy the clown.
Oh, man. Well,
super fun.
We went over some great stuff today. I want to thank you, Lorie, for coming on. One last question. Well, two last questions, actually. So one is, so a lot of dentists are listening to this show. What are some of the challenges that might come up as they try to implement some of these things? Are there any hurdles that they might need to overcome in order to really apply some of these things that we're talking about?
Yeah, I think you can have some team resistance, believe it or not, if you've got a couple people that are super markety in the practice.
Yeah.
And then those people are like going out going, I was here, I got this card, call this person, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. The rest of the team's kind of like, wah, wah, because they weren't in on the excitement. My number one recommendation would be to somehow get the whole entire team involved. Even if it's a charity that you're working toward or doing something together as a team, really gets people bought into, the idea that we do have to market our practice, and also being super transparent. We had 35 new patients last month. We really need 56. And here's why.
Yeah.
And really being transparent about those numbers. I think so many times, dentists kind of try to plod along and act like everything's okay. And if they're working with really good financial people too, and they know that they need a certain level of, patients in their practice pool, and then they also need a certain number of new patients each month to help pay the bills, to help the momentum of referrals and keep our hygienists busy, all those types of things. I think they have to be honest, and I think they have to set goals. And I'm a super advocate for working with a consultant like you, other consultants, to get your team moving and rolling so that everybody's kind of moving in the same direction. There's nothing worse, and I've seen it firsthand, a couple practices I've worked with where like everybody is off in a different, moving in a different direction. So really trying to keep everybody, in line, even if it's a simple goal. We're going to up our new patients by 10 each, whatever the goal is. I don't care if it's the, Price is Right. Guys, climbing up the hill. Show everybody what you're doing and be transparent about what the needs are of the practice. Yeah.
Oh, that is huge. That is huge. And that's such a good opportunity to unify everyone. And like you said, so that we're all pulling in the same direction and just see, and kind of accountability, have something in the break room that shows, hey, this month we're at 32 new patients. We're trying to get to 47. Here's what we need to do to make up that. Let's control what we can control, and say, let's see, we're going to ask X amount of people today, and then just be okay with the results, but yeah, I think transparency is huge. It makes them feel more invested too, that you trust them, you're trusting them with the numbers and all that stuff. It's not just, hey, this is my practice and I'm going to sit over here and you do all this stuff, but you are an active member in all this. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Lorie, thanks again for coming on. Why don't you tell everyone, if they want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that? Tell us a little bit about ADOM too and how they can get involved with that.
Of course. Well, the American Association of Dental Office Management, or ADOM, as you mentioned at the beginning, is the only association in the nation for dental practice managers. And what's so great about that is we have a whole plethora of treatment coordinators, insurance coordinators. I mean, you name it. It's everyone who makes up that critical front office component. So ADOM is an amazing organization with educational resources. We have connection from office manager to office manager. We have over 70 unique chapters nationwide that meet regionally. Wow. We have an amazing annual conference that I'm happy to say at the time of this podcast, we've sold out. We broke all records this year. We sold out in May this year, which we've never done before. Over 1,100 dental office managers will be converging onto Orlando, Florida in September. And not to timestamp this too much, but it's always a very wonderful and unique event. So I encourage anyone who wants to become an office manager or is an office manager and or has the role of the office manager but doesn't have the title, which happens so often,
Yeah.
to check out dentalmanagers.com. If there's a dentist that has additional questions about anything I've talked about, B2B, B2C, all that fun stuff, you're more than welcome to ask any question. My email is Lorie, Lorie, @dentalmanagers.com. I do answer myself. I don't have an AI representative formulating my responses for me yet, but it's
So
still
old school.
It's still 2023, so I know, right? Exactly. So I know. I remember when the out of office used to go into details about where we're going. Now it's like, hey, I'm out.
Yeah,
I'm just out. So I really appreciate you allowing me to have a platform to talk about marketing. I mean, keep doing what you're doing too. This is very exciting. And really, thank you for recognizing the office manager in the process, because so many times we leave that out, and they're such a critical player in all of this, whether they're the team captain or just on the team.
yeah.
They do make up that wonderful, like I said, panoramic view of everything that's happening in the practice. So I really thank you for doing that. We really appreciate it.
You bet. You bet. Well, thanks again, Lorie, for coming on. We'll have to have you on again for a third time in the future.
Awesome. Anytime. Thank you.